All right, this is my wrap-up video for week 2 of my Read What You Own challenge, in which I'm reading 75 books that I already own before I can buy any more. And those can be physical books that I've got on my shelves, or it could be ebooks that I have here on my Kindle. I'm doing pretty well. I'm actually in week 4 of not buying books, but only kind of the second official week of like declaring that I'm doing this. And I'm pretty happy about it. I have not bought any books. I haven't been tempted to buy any books. And for me, that's kind of unique or kind of been a challenge because I live in China, and in China, we order everything online. We do all of our shopping online. I even order groceries and food and everything like that online. And I pretty much just use one shopping platform called Taobao. And that's where I was also buying all my books. So I'm kind of proud of myself for not getting tempted to also search for books while I'm doing other online shopping and ordering things like that. So it's pretty good, actually, and I'm glad that I've done it. And I feel like I've kind of broken that habit. I was in the habit of buying at least 1 or 2 books a week. I know I was definitely buying 5 or 6 books a month, and that was just, it's just too much. And that's in addition to getting things on Kindle and getting things on Amazon. I should also throw in there that I have canceled my Amazon Unlimited subscription, or no, I'm sorry, Kindle Unlimited subscription, which is about, I was paying about $12 a month, and you can read, tons of books for free. It's like a subscription service. I'm sure everybody knows what it is, but I read a lot of books before with that, but I've canceled that because I feel like that also leads me into some purchases and some shopping, and I don't want to be doing that. So that's going quite well. A little update too, like my reading time has been really reduced. I've picked up a second job. So I'm a full-time teacher, which is a pretty demanding and time-consuming job in and of itself. And then I've also picked up some evening work and a little bit of weekend work too, doing some tutoring. So I'm trying to help out some family members that are definitely in financial need and feeling a pinch. So it's made me really appreciate the free time and the downtime to read. And it's made me realize that that is genuinely really a gift and a privilege, that if you have that time like I did, I still do have some of that time, but I am grateful now for the time that I do have to just sit down and read a book. So if you've got a lot of that time, you're really living kind of a luxurious lifestyle, in my opinion, even if you're not wealthy or anything like that, but just to be able to have that kind of free time, that sort of disposable downtime, I think in this day and age, or at least in the current times that we're in, that's really quite a privilege. So if you've got that, you should feel grateful for that. So the book that I read this week was Poachers and Pills by J.D. Clapp, and I read that on my Kindle. I don't know why, I just suddenly am drawn to reading on the Kindle. I think because I'm on the go a bit more, so it's easier to just grab my Kindle and take it with me and read in my downtime. This book really surprised me. It was really touching, really powerful. It's a pretty sad book, and I'll talk about why I think it's sad and why I thought it was touching. I had it kind of tagged as grit lit, and I remembered buying it when I bought some Larry Brown books and a few other sort of grit lit, like Ron Rash and things like that. And it's definitely in that vein, although it's definitely more literary, I think, than grit lit, although its subject matter is pretty gritty. So yeah, I guess I'll get into that. The first third of the book is a series of interlinked short stories that almost read like a novella. In fact, I stopped a couple of times to check, like, am I reading a novel or am I actually reading short stories? Because I wanted to be reading short stories. But the first third of it, like I said, it's interlinked short stories that basically chronicle a family that is being destroyed through OxyContin addiction. And that also eventually leads to heroin addiction. And not just, give away the plot, but there are 2 older parents that end up outliving their grown children. One of those children also has children of their own. So there's, so the grandparents end up becoming the parents through death. Their grown children struggle with addiction and eventually become overcome with addiction. And this is set in kind of a rural northeastern, I think it's northeastern U.S. I don't think they say which state it is. I want to say it's something like New Hampshire, or maybe even a Virginia or something like that. But it's not, they're definitely not wealthy. They're living in a rural area. They're definitely living in poverty. They're still, treating hunting as a source of food. And for the people who are addicted, they're also treating that as a source of income, where they're often like looking for fresh carcasses, fresh roadkill in a few stories that they can sell then for drug money, which just goes to show how even in rural areas, people become, desperate, and some of the ways that they would go about trying to raise money to feed their addiction. It's something we kind of often associate with an urban life where people turn to crime or other sort of like other criminal activities, theft, petty theft, or, prostitution, gang activity, robbery, stuff like that. But in rural areas, people would just, certainly do those things, but also there's a fair amount of poaching to get your pills, I guess, basically. So I found the book, like I said, to be really touching and really sad and really powerful. For me personally, I've had some people very close to me become drug addicts, and it's ruined relationships. And, it's the kind of thing that never really goes away. It's kind of always on your mind, especially when it's someone who is very, very close to you. So I found it difficult at times, but not as difficult as something like Noticed by Heather Lewis or a Hubert Selby Jr., where it's really graphic and really difficult to read in the way that it's depicted. And that's a credit, I think, to J.D. Clapp. He's much more interested in sort of mapping out the emotional and psychological damage and the interior of these characters and the processes and what leads them further down the path of addiction and into their own eventual demise and destruction. I also found this really interesting writing because that is all kind of juxtaposed against a very kind of naturalist style of writing. Very, in some places, kind of reminiscent of some of Ernest Hemingway's writing, especially Nick Adams' short stories, where he's got a lot of short stories about characters who are out fishing and hunting and living in the wild and that kind of thing. And I think he really is influenced by that, but in a very positive way. There's a lot of great authors, other great authors that do that too. Faulkner is like that as well, and countless other authors. And I think that he's kind of continuing some of that tradition of juxtaposing rural poverty against the beauty of a rural setting, if that makes any kind of sense at all. So while it's a really, really good book and a really touching collection of short stories, it also deals with some pretty difficult themes. And overall, I found it to be a sad book, which is not a bad thing, but it's definitely more emotional and more powerful than I had anticipated it to be. So that's what I finished this week, and that's book number 4. I've had two DNFs, and then the other book that I read last week was Whatever Kills the Pain by C.W. Blackwell. I've continued reading on my Kindle this week after I finished Poachers and Pills. I started The Free by Willie Vlautin, but I'm very, very early into it, and I'm really loving it. I really have been wanting to read more Willie Vlautin. I don't know why I haven't. Sometimes I punish myself by withholding myself from the things that I like. But Willie Vlautin, again, kind of a naturalist, writing in rural settings and writing about people in the margins of society. Very beautiful writing, but also, pretty sad, I don't want to say bleak, but definitely people who are down and out. I'm very early into it, but I'm really hooked on it and really liking it, and actually hoping that I finish it up this weekend. So I'm recording this on a Saturday afternoon, and I'm hoping that I can knock it out this evening. I'm about 20% into it. So there you go. That's my wrap up for the Read What You Own Challenge Week 2. Let me know if you're doing the challenge or if you're interested in it and how it's going for you. Are you holding off on book buying? And let us know what are the things that you're doing to also kind of keep you from buying books. So there you go. Once again, my name is Carl, and this has been Please Read Your Book.